All natural effects have a spiritual cause. We are essentially spirits inhabiting the human body, and everything that happens to us or through us is created in the spirit world before it manifests in the physical world, be it deaths, diseases, or disasters that we call natural. All deaths at a very high level of the soul are a form of suicide because every soul chooses when it enters and exits this third density of illusions called the physical world. But this is not something we can consciously know or control because otherwise we wouldn't be able to play out this game called life fully. So, having said that premise of understanding, now the question remains, why are so many souls choosing to quit physical life on the planet right now? Let us examine this from the perspective of mass events and why they even occur in the first place. We cannot possibly comprehend the makeup of mass events of any sorts until we can grasp the larger skeleton in which they occur. At a soul level, an epidemic is usually a statement of mass social protest, where the physical conditions are not adept to produce the quality of life that makes survival worthwhile. Biology alone does not drive this physical vehicle, but in terms of our species' sustainability, mental states are equally important, if not more. No one falls sick unless that sickness serves a psychic or psychological purpose. Emotions cannot be separated from the body. The same way one's life experiences cannot be isolated from the environment one finds oneself in. Our inner experiences are impacted by our cultural and political environments, religious and philosophical impressions, societal dictates, etc. Look at what was going on in the world before the virus appeared. People from all walks of life are falling prey to despair, despondency, desperation, depression, which automatically lower bodily immunity. Despondency and apathy are enemies to the well being of our species. Social settings, political structures, economic statuses, environmental strategies, religious statements, or philosophical sentiments that propagate these poor mental conditions give birth to biological reprisal. Not only do such states of mind lessen bodily defenses, they activate and shift physical chemistry, creating imbalances in the body, thus commencing disease conditions. Lots of viruses, intrinsically capable of causing death in regular circumstances, confer overall health to the individual, coexisting with other viruses and participating in essential activities that preserve physical equilibrium. Nevertheless, if certain viruses are provoked beyond their normal activity, causing overproduction through mental conditions, they can then become life-threatening. The natural state of life itself is that of joy. And no matter whether logic, reasoning, or belief systems point to the contrary, it is mental states, opposites of despondency and apathy, that contribute to health and vitality, promoting physical, psychological, as well as spiritual well being among our population. We may live in a physical society, but primarily we operate within a society of thoughts and feelings that directly affect our body's behavior. This society of emotions, sentiments, and perceptions may be intangible, but it provokes all physical activities we are accustomed to. Hence, an epidemic, whether sweeping through animals or Homo sapiens, is not just biological but also a psychic statement wherein each being inherently knows that its own inner fulfillment can justify the quality of life on an individual basis, thereby contributing to mass survival of its species. Physically, viruses may be passed on from person to person, but literally, severe individual mental problems contribute to social mass diseases. So, it is essential to acknowledge the individual and its capacity to shape its inner experiences. Because only when the private nature of the individual is given importance can we begin to comprehend how amplifying this personal reality expands and blends to form vast mass reactions at a collective level of consciousness. We have a mass group of people quitting physical life on the planet today for precisely this reason, forcing us to feel the unity of humanity through these deaths as we intuit our deepest unconscious knowledge about ourselves, the world, the universe at large, creation, and the source itself that some call God. This is one of the most peculiar times we are facing as a collective species, and it is a time of great awakening. This pandemic is changing us more than we can imagine, and a huge planetary shift is occurring right now as we awaken to ourselves and become aware of who we really are. Epidemics mostly serve more than one purpose, conveying that certain circumstances can no longer be endured and change is inevitable. This kind of biological retaliation, often in the form of an outbreak, can continue till those pathetic conditions of society are forced to transform, transmute, and transcend. Consider how the plague caused feudalism to end in England. In the year 1348, the Black Death, a bubonic plague pandemic, swept through England, killing millions. This significant drop in population caused a labor shortage, thereby reducing the nobility's hold over the lower classes, resulting in peasants' triumph over the feudal system. Towns and cities grew. The decline of the guild system and an expansion in manufacturing changed Europe's economy and society. Thus, the Black Death brought about a decline in feudalism and helped end serfdom. The atmosphere wherein an epidemic transpires directly indicates the political, social, religious, or economic conditions that have progressed in the region. Many times, these outbreaks occur due to unproductive and ineffective political or social actions as people find themselves in hopeless conditions. Emotional isolation is a serial killer. Despondency is more contagious than any virus, and its flames ablaze the human heart, spreading from bed to bed, body to body, quicker than any disease carrier. It, however, touches those who may be in similar mental states and to a certain degree also accelerates the pace of what needs to be done collectively to cause social reform. Whenever any disaster of mass impact occurs, it opens up a huge space for people to act urgently on the pressing issues plaguing humanity. Each person that dies in an epidemic sends a message to their intimate survivors, and in the larger context, these deaths become part of a mass social protest. People are shaken inwardly, which then agitates numerous elements of social life to be transformed and repositioned, sometimes including overthrowing of ineffectual governments and the likes. And so, no death occurs in vain. Therefore, pandemics sweeping a mass population signal massive public problems that threaten to move humanity to psychic, psychological, and physical disaster. But even during a pandemic, there are those who don't die, who are not affected by the disease, who see themselves in a totally different light, who are untouched by despondency, who consider themselves as effective rather than ineffective, who rise from unheroic circumstances then act with gallantry, bringing about much needed social transformation. The horrifying epidemic conditions engulf them. The sight of the dying confer their lives with new meaning, purpose, and inner vision, rousing in them novel ideas for economic, political, sociological, and even spiritual reform. When we isolate epidemics as mere biological events or bacterium virus attacks, then the solution seems tangible. Isolate the virus, study its characteristics, and administer people with a tiny dose of the disease so that the body can battle or develop immunity for it. Although this may seem like the obvious solution, such as those vaccinated against polio or tuberculosis do not get the disease, it is effectually a myopic vision of the actual problem as these mass events are being examined in a very narrow context. As explained before, the cause of a mass epidemic isn't solely biological. The physical symptoms are mere reflections of a deeper malfunction. Besides, there is a difference between a virus replicated in laboratories and that naturally residing in the body. The difference, although subtle, can be recognized by our bodies, but obviously not lab apparatuses. Our bodies will produce antibodies owing to the vaccine administration. Nonetheless, the body's chemistry is confounded at the same time as it knows that it is reacting to a disease that is not a true disease but a biological counterfeit. As the body's organic integrity is compromised, it may simultaneously produce antibodies to other similar diseases, thereby stretching its defense mechanism to the extreme. So the person falls prey to another disease after some time, while our scientists and doctors discover more viruses to immunize the populace against. There is a hurry to develop newer vaccinations against the latest virus, but majority of this is based on predictions. Scientists try to anticipate the quantity of population who might be affected by a certain virus that has caused a significant number of deaths. And then, as a protective measure, the mass is invited to get the latest vaccination. And so, many who would not have contracted the disease otherwise are then meticulously vaccinated, where the immune system is pressured to perform. And sometimes, in such situations, due to the immunization overstretched, those who have psychologically decided on dying will die anyway, whether from that disease or from the side effects of the vaccination. In our society, scientific and medical beliefs operate, where vaccines are given as a kind of protective medicine, bringing about in healthy individuals a slight disease condition that gives immunity against a more massive visitation. This procedure, however, works well for those who believe in it. So it is essentially the belief that works and not the method. I am not suggesting here to forsake the method altogether when it seemingly works for so many. Yet it is important to understand why vaccination brings about the preferred outcome. Although this kind of medical practice is very specific, one cannot be injected with the desire to live or with the zest, delight, and contentment of the healthy animal. There is no inoculation against beliefs. If one has decided to die, protected from one disease in this manner, will subsequently contract another. Thus, the immunization process, while particularly effective, may only strengthen prior beliefs about the body's incompetence. That said, I do not mean to undermine our medical systems in any way. Yet, no one ever dies who does not want to die at some higher level of consciousness. An illness implies the overall body's defense system at work, and without some illnesses, the body could not endure this journey called life. The body often produces its own preventive medicine or inoculation by seeking out new, foreign substances in its environment, assimilating such properties in small doses, coming down with an illness, then curing from it, as the body employs what it can to socialize a seeming visitor, otherwise called an alien substance. And in this way, it immunizes itself. So, the body naturally has within it all that is required for its own defense. In our world, a lot of emphasis is given to the Darwinian theory of survival of the fittest. Yet, little has been explored about what makes life worth living, the quality of life, or survival itself. In other words, if life is not worthwhile, no species will have a reason to continue. Civilizations are quite literally social species, and they die when they see no reason to live. Thus, the survival of our civilization is quite literally dependent upon the conditions of each individual, and that condition is initially a spiritual, psychic state. In conclusion, epidemics by their public nature speak of public problems, problems that sociologically threaten to sweep the individual to psychic disaster as their physical materialization does biologically. These are the reasons also for the range or the limits of various epidemics, why they sweep through one area and leave another clear, why one in the family will die and another survive. For in this mass venture, the individual still forms his or her personal reality. The whole universe is made of vibrations and energy patterns. Everything has a vibratory signature. The galaxies have their unique vibrations. An amoeba has its own, and so do we humans. Our own energy pattern contributes to our sustainability. Hence, staying healthy is a matter of being attuned to this pattern. This is, of course, a novel way to perceive health or diseases. The future of medicine will be all about adjusting our vibrations to health frequencies, vastly different from the biochemical medicines administered today. Using sound healing, subliminals, mental recoding, energy attunement, etc., rather than ingesting insane amounts of pharmaceutical drugs with major side effects. Because when we are well aligned, then our biochemistry is in perfect balance. The cells do their job, the organs function well, and we enjoy good health. But when we are not aligned, there is an imbalance in this chemistry, thus disease conditions birth. We are an interconnected species, and when one aspect breaks down, it affects the entire system. Living systems cannot be isolated into parts and make that work. Every part is a part of the whole, and whatever we do interacts with the whole system. For instance, the general practice to treat cancer is to kill the cells or take out the organs, hoping the organism recovers. At times it does, mostly it doesn't. More die from the treatment and its side effects than the actual disease. Because it's not being treated as a whole system, nor is it guided by the patterns of nature. To be alive means to be conscious. This also reflects our relationship with nature. When we are healthy, we are one with nature, and every aspect is in harmony with each other. That is why people who spend more time in nature are less prone to illnesses in general. Once upon a time, a holy man was walking from South England to North England. On the way, he met plague. "So, you too are traveling to the north," noted the holy man. "How many lives do you intend to take this time?" 10,000, replied plague. "I see," said the holy man and bade goodbye. without condemning plague. Being old and frail, he journeyed slowly and arrived in North England many days after plague. Once there, he witnessed the tragic and chaotic scene of countless people dead and dying on the streets, rodents and fleas everywhere, bodies being buried indiscriminately, and oh, the stench. He stopped a passing merchant and inquired how badly the epidemic had hit. Oh, it is horrible, the worst ever. We have lost well over 100,000 lives to plague, cried the merchant in dismay. The holy man did what he could to help, then got back on the road southbound. On the way, he once again encountered plague. I thought you said you were going to take 10,000 lives, said the holy man. I did, stated plague nonchalantly. Then how come? Oh, the rest died of fear.